microphones. So if you care to hear, you may need one of these. Okay, are we live? This is, yeah, we go. Okay, good morning. I'm not sure if that's, how big is that? How's the volume? Terrible? Good? Good? Okay. Thanks. Okay, so welcome to the last Daily Tck meeting, we think. Well, probably it's our last meeting. Who knows if this is the, well, we know probably this is not the last day of negotiations. Unfortunately, or fortunately, I guess depending on your perspective, we have, we're one man down. We've lost our fearless leader, Chris Wright, to sleep, I think. I don't know. Maybe he was partying last night or something. I'm pretty sure it was some bar called the Indaba. It's pretty wild. Actually, I heard there were a lot of parties there. Okay. Thought that'd go better. Anyway, so it is supposed to be the last day of the Paris Climate Change Conference of COP21, and we have heard from notes from the Indaba last night. One of the last things that was said, I should say this morning, was that this will not be the last day of the Paris Climate Change Conference. I think the plan is to do informal consultations throughout today. So no more meetings potentially at all that we can attend. And it's just going to be working on the text, working through options, trying to get consensus or find landing zones on some of these outstanding issues like finance and the details of how to differentiate between parties' different capabilities or responsibilities post-2020. And then tomorrow morning or early afternoon, they hope to come out with a new text, and hopefully that's it. Maybe there's some discussion that comes after that, maybe a whole nother day of fun. But certainly, I haven't met anybody that is expecting this thing will wrap today. I think it's pretty clear that today's going to be both a tough day to understand what's happening for civil society, since we're not able to go into the rooms, and a tough day for us to influence the final pieces of this, since a lot of these final pieces are parts of big packages, and it's really small rooms with ministers. We may also not have an opportunity to influence this through the media. So that's a tool that we use as civil society pretty frequently, setting a frame, putting pressure, and there's some risk that whatever we put out there, so any quotes we give or amplify, will be used in the final summary of what happened. Yet we don't know what happened, right? So let's just talk about maybe what we do know. So just to take things back to the very beginning, for the GCCA, this was about a Paris moment, which is where the world is sort of at right now, how far we've come, kind of looking around, looking at the biggest global mobilization that we've ever had. Here in Paris, to kick this off, we had the biggest gathering of world leaders in human history. We had all kinds of announcements, daily announcements that indicated that for the business community, for investors, the world has shifted, that they can't ignore climate change, that we're on this irreversible course toward a clean energy world. And the question in Paris was, will we be able to accelerate that to limit climate change, limit climate impacts, and will we be able to bolster resilience sufficiently to protect the most vulnerable people, the most vulnerable communities? And what I think the read is sort of at the moment is that we have the building blocks in this deal to ultimately limit warming to 1.5 degrees. There are options there that could help us do it. We have some key dates on the table for us to take the INDCs, the National Climate Action Plans, and ramp them up, starting before 2020, and then continuing in cycles every 5 years. We have at the moment the dates in the text. These cycles we talked about how it can't just be about targets for ambition or for mitigation. It has to be linked to finance, and as last we've seen, and I think there are discussions that we're pushing back on this pretty significantly. We have an opportunity to revisit our finance goals every 5 years at the moment. So there's a lot of open questions about what's going to come out of the finance piece of this, but there's an opportunity to get the means to implement increased ambition over time. On resilience, it's a much cloudier picture. I think there were big questions when we came into this around whether we would get loss and damage as a sort of separate third pillar of this agreement, and things kept moving in that direction. So now we have it in the text. There's no longer an option for loss and damage to go away, but it's now linked to, and the U.S. in particular is being really strong on this, an exclusion from any liability. So there's, at the moment, and we're not sure if this is a tactic, but probably it's not a tactic, the U.S. has taken a red line that any inclusion of loss and damage has to exclude potential liability or compensation forever, as long as this agreement stands. This morning in a political coordination meeting, there was even mention of at least one legal expert seeing that exclusion of liability not being well bound to loss and damage exclusively. So potentially that liability piece could extend to the whole agreement. What that means is if we want to build in financial support for helping communities that are dealing with losses and damages of climate impacts, we're going to have to do that in a sort of separate forum outside of this space, which to the most vulnerable countries, especially those who have already experienced pretty serious losses and damages, that's unacceptable. So we're in a tough spot with loss and damage. We made more progress than we thought we would, or at least than conservative guesses would have put us. But we're in a very difficult place, potentially locking in a bad situation that we can't build on. We have a long-term goal in this to set the direction of travel. At the moment, we have a long-term goal in this that we could interpret as ambitious. We have language that could help us get to zero emissions by mid-century. A lot of pushback on that last night from various parties that want to take it to the end of the century, so significantly watering that down. I think decarbonization was a word that we used a lot earlier this week. That's not there. There's a much more vague term that leaves some room for interpretation. I think it's climate neutral. And I think there's an opportunity in that for us to define what climate neutral is. And there's already a sense that could be zero emissions by mid-century, or at least net zero emissions by mid-century. So that's potentially positive. A lot of us here, especially yesterday, which was the 67th anniversary of the Universal Declaration of Human Rights, which was signed in this city, we're hoping to see some movement on human rights back into the actual operational part of the agreement, and that hasn't happened. So human rights is along with a lot of other stuff that we've worked hard to enshrine in the operational part of this agreement, is in the preamble. I would say at this point that's probably unlikely to change. What else did I hear? Sorry. So in broad terms, I guess we have, and I'd love to go out to the audience and have you volunteer to throw out updates and stuff you've been following, or pieces you're passionate about, or maybe even ask questions that as a group we can answer. But in broad terms, I think the read is that there's a lot of good stuff in here to protect. That the potential of this agreement is still huge. It could accelerate our transition to clean energy, and it could bolster resilience. But there's a lot of conversations happening in these closed-door meetings that are focused on delete. For instance, 1.5 degrees as an important piece of this. We're hearing that Saudi Arabia in particular has said, okay, we'll take 1.5 degrees, but if we do that, we're going to delete any references to special treatment for least developed countries, SIDS. I think there's push for the Africa group to be noted as the most vulnerable and especially in need of support. So a lot of big trade-offs that could get made, watering this down on all of these key pieces that could change this. And if we talk about it as if it is a done deal, when it's all said and done, journalists could be writing the story using your quotes about the state of play now, putting it in the context of the very end of this thing. So it's just kind of a confusing place to be as a campaigner. You wanna champion and defend all of the good stuff, push for ambition. At the same time, this is probably one of the last opportunities for us to really interpret what this means, right? It could get settled at any point over the weekend. A lot of reporters will have filed their story. So if we call this a shit deal, if we think it's not delivered, then we may not be sending the right signals to markets, investors, and others that this is really going to help us sort of influence decisions around where to put money and whether fossil fuels are a safe bet going forward, whether big fossil fuel companies have moral license to operate anymore. So it's a bit of a confusing place, but I think we have a lot of potential to end this weekend and end these years of efforts with a step forward in a really positive direction. Maybe I'll stop there and take it into the audience. Yeah, okay. Tierney's gonna swivel the camera so folks who are tuning in online at Place to Be or some of our partners around the world can tell what's going on. Does anybody have any updates or pieces or questions? No? I'm not as brazen as Chris, or I'm just gonna call you out.
Hi, it's actually a question. Sorry for the updates.
Right.
I had a question not about the treaty itself, but about the Nazca platform. I heard before the start of the COP that one of the issues was giving the governance to this platform. I was wondering if there was any progress on that topic, because I heard an article. I read a UN official saying that they couldn't monitor all the initiatives that was on the platform. So I was just worrying about being able to make the difference between the good and the bad solutions that would be on this platform, to be able to really monitor how much it's going to impact to the 1.5 degree.
So I haven't followed that closely, and I don't have an update on the specifics. Does anybody else follow this piece? No? Nobody? Anybody? Yes. Just throw out speculation, wild speculation. It's a good day to do it, or a terrible day to do it. Okay. I'm afraid we don't have an update on that, but we can follow up with some colleagues and try and get an answer for you. So if you connect with me after, make that happen. Any other updates?
Well, this is not an update, it's a question. I was really confused last night when I saw the text, and I was trying to figure out, is there a real ratcheting up mechanism here or not? I've been hearing different people saying different things on this, and I was looking at Article 3, and the language there, not even remotely binding. And then you go to Article 10, which has shall language, and it says that the stocktake shall be used to enhance action on relevant provisions or whatever. And I'm wondering, but if if the language in Article 3 is non-binding, but you have a binding pledge like to enhance your action and in 10, does that create something to ratchet up anything, or where are we? I don't know.
So I think we might be able to tap our resident expert on the ratchet, who just walked in. Perfect timing. Can you give us an update of your sense of where that stands, and whether it's crap, wonderful, or lots still to play for?
Yeah, I'm here to talk about the ratchet across the negotiations. I just kept running. I think we do have the elements for a strong ambition mechanism in there, and I think actually what we need to have today is some countries fighting to keep them in there. I agree that some of the language can be strengthened around kind of invites or decides, and that these kind of specific legal terms. I think what I'm more interested in as someone who mainly is focused on sort of campaigning in the UK or in Europe is what kind of expectation we set out of Paris. And I think actually civil society has a really important role in creating that political moment where actually we can see an increase of ambition. It's very difficult here for negotiators who just work in their ministries to have any mandate to kind of really increase ambition. But what we actually need to see is that Paris sends a strong signal where ministers back at home in their national capitals can make that decision to increase ambition and can see that that's the direction the world is going in. So what the strongest outcome for Paris for me would not really be in so much of the kind of detail of the text, although that is important so we can hold our governments to account. But it's how we message that. So there is language about progression. And that's kind of stronger than no backslide. That's a little bit more positive. It's saying all countries, every target they set, the next one has to be higher. You also have quite a better language than I was expecting at this stage on every 5 years, all countries coming back to the table with a new commitment. And yes, we can argue about how strong that language is, but we've seen over the last few years that the kind of pressure that builds in a country to be in the international spotlight and have to come forward to the table. It's quite embarrassing for them to come empty-handed and to come with something not very good. And I remember a few years ago when Australia put forward a kind of laughably small target for the second commitment period of the Kyoto Protocol. But there was huge civil society outcry, and that really had an impact. And now, that's played into sort of national politics, and the new government haven't been able to be as climate skeptic. So I think it's seeing the link between what happens internationally and what actually happens at home. I think as I said, I think there is still some things to really fight for in terms of what's that first opportunity we have out of Paris to increase ambition. And at the moment, that's in the decision text rather than the formal agreement. So, that makes sense in some ways, just in terms of organisation, because the decision text is about what happens before the agreement comes into effect in 2020. But it's up to us coming out of Paris to also set that expectation and say, well, you've recognised the need to keep temperatures below 1.5 degrees if we're going to, protect the survival and dignity of people all around the world. And so, when's your next moment to increase ambition? Because also the current INDCs are nowhere near compatible with that. So I think there's enough hooks in there as it is now to really hold our governments to account. There was always going to be lots of work after Paris, so we can have a quick break, but then get back to it. And yes, there will be useful language in the Paris Agreement, as long as a lot of it doesn't get lost today. Ambition is still being discussed as one of the big cross-cutting themes, but I wouldn't get too bogged down in the detail. But that might just be because I prefer campaigning to sort of real policy detail.
Okay, another big piece of this is differentiation. So how do we deal with countries' respective capabilities and responsibilities going forward? Some of that is actually, there's some language in there on the purpose that might move us in a good direction. Does anybody have any updates on differentiation? We heard from the Brazilian delegation, the government delegation, that early yesterday had cracked a compromise, but I think it's still kind of up in the air. Anybody have any specifics on differentiation and what the world might look like for countries that are developing? Nothing? No? Okay. Something to watch. Any other updates?
So
So real quick update for the health language within the topic if anybody is interested in what we are following. So we were pushing along with everybody else to have it recovered in Article 2. It's not there. It's still kept to the preamble with locked in brackets and still have it in workstream 2. And on the other hand, we're seeing health language mentioned in most of the INDCs, like 60% of them have been over that. And the countries that do include it are mostly in the south. So we've also heard the topic being mentioned more than previously in ADPs in the NGOs, at least within the young organizations.
Thank you. All right, anybody else have any updates on the agreement, the details of the agreement? Yes.
Just a few updates regarding the Arab group. I had the chance to talk to some of the Arab member states after the text was released. They were not happy with the text, especially with few details regarding the carbon pricing. They consider it a very red line, so it was not discussed before. As well as they want to emphasize more in the CPDR, to differentiate between the developing countries and developed countries as well. So there is a very big fight for them. So it's very interesting how will the negotiations end with the final text.
Thanks. Anybody else? No? All right. Okay, so I'd like to pivot to campaigns, actions. I'm not aware of any that are planned for today here. Is anybody doing anything today? Yeah, we got a few. Excellent.
So actually it's going partly here and partly outside. It's going to be a very big youth event, so it's especially for you young people. So set your alarms for 2 o'clock in the afternoon, and when the alarms rings, you just like join us at the polar bear. I don't remember its name. Aura, yeah. And then we're going to walk out and make like human chains outside the Bourget in order to protest against the text and everything. So
the message, can you repeat the message for me?
Well, the message is like, let's make an ambitious text, and for now it's not ambitious, well, as ambitious as we want. So let's join if you want. It's going to be a great action, a big action, and so please join.
Great, I saw some other hands who said the same thing. Okay, anybody else? No? Okay, well, we do know that there are a few actions happening over the weekend. And maybe, Tierney, can you pull up the details on that? But, go ahead.
So, on the green zone, there is 2 o'clock, YMCA are having a flash mob. We have the Waka Waka song from Shakira. We'll edited the text a bit, so feel free to join and so there, so you can just follow the other ones.
That's fantastic, and I believe that the Waka Waka song was a very popular young-go energizer in Durban, where this whole journey began. So it's fitting. Is anybody there? Is it not the Waka Waka song? I'm not so familiar with Shakira's library. She's great. Okay. So I think it would be nice to, since we have all of these passionate people from around the world in the room, just to get a sense of what are your next steps. So we knew that this would not be us saving the world. We knew we had crappy national climate action plans. We knew we had to fight for some tools to build on those. I'd love to get a sense from some of you who are willing to share what happens in early 2016. Where do you go from here? This may be our last chance to meet as a group, and I think there's some super exciting stuff planned. Little whispers I've heard. So if you don't mind, let's share some 2016 plans.
Before we do that, do you mind if I go real quick to ask the question, because I haven't understood if any of the actions we're doing for the weekend are connected to anything that is happening outside.
Maybe we have some insights into that.
2 p.m. action, in fact, will make the junction with the green zone and the blue zone That's why we are making it outside. You mentioned we'll go from the green zone and go to the flags in front of the COP21, and we will join them with the human chain too, and we will join in the flag forests in front of the COP. So this will be a big youth action with people from outside the COP and people from inside the COP, and then we'll make like a big circle in the forest, and this will be great.
Sounds great. Tierney, do you want to maybe give us a quick overview of what some of our partners are doing outside?
So yeah, a few different events going on tomorrow outside of the conference. I think a lot of people would have heard an awful lot of different rumours about this, but we are aware of 3 different events that will be taking place in Paris tomorrow. So by 3 different organisations. So it starts at 9:30 at a Climate Justice for Peace event. That's organised by Friends of the Earth and various other groups calling for sort of mass action. Trying to figure out where that takes place, but at the moment I don't know. So we can follow up with that on the notes. We then have another action that will be taking place at the Eiffel Tower. Some people will be joining at the Eiffel Tower to take part in a human chain event down there. So that kicks off as the second event, again organised by various different groups, including Friends of the Earth and some of the French coalition groups. And then the final thing that we're aware of is the Red Lines action that most of you will probably have heard about over the last sort of few weeks. And that's taking place at currently an undisclosed location. There's been some trainings, people have kind of been clued up on that. 350 are kind of heading up that, and you can RSVP and find out all of the details. But that's going to be specifically sort of targeting, sort of looking forward and targeting our big fights for next year, particularly around the fossil fuel industry. So they're the 3 things that we are aware of. I don't know if anyone in the room has more information on those than what I'm picking up from various emails that I'm just scanning.
I'm just assuming that one of them relates to this paper that keeps being handed out. So I think one of them you mentioned is probably this one, and I think it's at 2 o'clock.
So if you speak French or have the cool augmented reality Google Translate app, you can get some insights from this flyer. Okay, let's get some buzz going. Spread some rumors about where we're going to focus our energy after this. I wanna go to Canada, since you guys have been kicking ass in campaigning. There's beautiful stuff happening across Canada in spite of the politics for a decade, and well, longer I'm sure, but I'm just more familiar with recent times. Now you have a new political situation, but you still have a huge oil industry. You still have big pipeline fights, I'd assume. What's your focus going to be in 2016? Do you have a sense yet?
Yeah, so I mean the climate movement in Canada has had to get real strong over the last decade, since I mean our last Prime Minister Harper was one of the worst heads of state in the world. He got elected when I was midway through high school, right? So my whole activist life has been fighting him. He was overthrown finally just in October. We have a young, new, charismatic government and a young, new, charismatic Prime Minister. But he came into this COP with Harper's INDCs. So, you know, they're talking about, their rhetoric is better. Harper wasn't quite a full-on denier, but he was as close to that line as you can get without being part of the GOP. And so again, the rhetoric's better, the hope's better. We'd be feeling really positive about the government and the messages they're bringing through to this COP if it was the early 80s instead of 2015. So again, the whole COP, when we've met with our negotiators, when we've met with our Minister of Environment and Climate Change, the message has been, we're supporting the 1.5, but we can't tell you how we're going to get there. We need to meet with the provinces because of the resource sort of geography in Canada, because we're so big. The provinces have quite a bit of power. Most of the provincial premiers have been here. The subnational leaders have been here. Some of them for the full 2 weeks. Some of them on and off. And it's hard to kind of get consensus. There's lots of sensitivity in Canada around the government, which is based in Ottawa, sort of pulling rank on the provinces, especially the western provinces, which tend to be more resource rich. So again, the pipeline fight has been strong, and it looks like the first big one is on its way out. We're looking at hopefully a Keystone type victory, maybe in 2016, maybe in 2017. That's with a pipeline called the Northern Gateway. And then divestment is growing fast and in a big way in Canada too. So again, this whole negotiation, the government and its negotiators have been, give us a break. We just got elected in October. We don't have time. We got to work with the provinces. We got to come up with realistic targets that are going to work. And we'll talk about this at home. So our message heading out of this COP is, well, like there's 17 of us on the youth delegation. There's quite a few more back home in Canada, and we're going to be right on you right away. That's going to start right in the new year or earlier. So if anyone's planning an exchange in Canada, get in touch.
Thanks, it's really exciting. Okay, now I would like to go to the Brazilians. You guys have some potentially maybe a new head of state, right? We'll see what happens until it gets stopped. But regardless of the politics, what are you guys going to work on in 2016? Where's your focus from here?
So I think we keep on working what we're doing now and focusing on our capacity buildings in all the country, because Engagemundo, that is the group that we are from, we are working since 2 years in these capacity buildings with children and youth people from all over the Brazil to raise climate awareness, not only about climate awareness, because we are also still with gender and sustainable development and the habitat agenda. And yeah, we keep going on it and also keep going and trying to make lobbyists and experts and doing all kinds of things that we are doing here inside the conference. And I think expand our delegation to next year. Now we are in 20 people, and COP21 maybe 40 next year.
Right. Anybody else have some teasers for where you're going to focus your work?
I forgot. And also being Sexify.
They're gonna sexify the climate movement even more. Watch out.
Yeah, so we're from Norway, and basically the Norwegian international politics is based on our being able to continue drilling for oil and pay ourselves off by the use of the market mechanisms and climate quotas. So back at home, we are going to focus on enhancing the focus on cutting emissions nationally. Especially if we are seeing a more ambitious goal like a 1.5 or something in that direction. That means it has to be reflected in national policies, and there are some new national targets going to be discussed back at home in the year to come. But also at the same time, the government is opening for new oil drilling activities in the Arctic. So in Norway, we're now planning to file a lawsuit against the state for this. So that's going to be what we're focusing on in this spring, mainly.
Right away, we're hearing the pivot back to individual projects and policies that are trying to extract more fossil fuels, and we're going to be fighting to keep them in the ground. That's fantastic. Anybody else want to share a update? Yeah.
Hi, I'm Hannah and I'm from Sweden, and this is just like a very small thing, but next week there will be like the biggest charity event of the year, and this focus of the year will be on climate refugees. So that's like a huge thing in Sweden, the Musikhjälpen, and it will collect a lot of money, but mainly like raise a lot of awareness, I think. So hopefully we'll see like during the year like a bigger engagement with climate refugees. That question. Yeah.
Okay, we're gonna go back over here.
So this has nothing to do with my organization, but as some of you might know, in either April or May, there is going to be the most massive occupation of coal mines in world's history, and there is like huge sort of planning on how we can synchronize this all over the world. But in comparison to the Daily Tck mine, where there was like 3 machines occupied, this is going to occupy like thousands of them. So stay tuned and spread the word.
Absolutely. I think we heard some announcements from a few of the groups helping fuel that activity yesterday. Maybe there's 350.org press conference with a little teaser, so you can check on that. I've heard Avaz is involved and lots of others. So some of the big logos, and then all of our smaller local networks or smaller delegations too. I think there's just so much we can do. It's really exciting. We had another contribution here.
Hi. In France, with the REFED, we are going to work on the youth implication and negotiation, because they keep on reporting that we are the future, but they don't give us our place in the negotiation to do it. So we are going to try to have youth delegate, but we youth delegate, not only something completely false that just give you a pink badge and you can do nothing on the negotiation, because we think that it's important for our future, but also because they speak about 2020 or 2030, and who is going to implement the agreement is young people, so they have to imply them to be faster and not have to train them after when they are going to negotiate for them.
That's fantastic. It sounds a little bit like some of what our Canadian friends pushed earlier this week, where youth need to be heard, not just seen. A few others. Fantastic. It's going to be an exciting spring.
So I'm Caroline, also from Sweden. The divestment movement has been growing pretty quickly in Sweden the last few years. The campaign is called Fossil Free Sweden. Now our lovely government has initiated their own Fossil Free Sweden campaign, that they're going to be the first fossil-free welfare state sometime. They haven't said when. But this initiative does not yet include divestment. So the pension funds, there's no plan on divesting them yet. So this is going to be a huge campaign next year. And we're really going to focus on growing this movement around divesting the whole Sweden, since we're going to be fossil-free Sweden. So that's going to be awesome. Stay tuned.
All the fossil fuels, all the money, all the people. This is fantastic. Okay. Anybody else? No? No other updates? Do we have any more health people in the room? We made some big announcements about growing numbers recently. I think they left to talk about health, maybe. Yeah, right here.
It's not really about health, it's like the health of the planet, but in terms of talking about where cities and different regions and looking at different levels of power, I think there's a lot of exciting opportunity to use the momentum that we've all built for a long-term goal here of going 100% clean, 100% renewable and fossil-free, to bring that back to our cities or our local areas. So just before the COP, 50 cities in the UK announced that they would be going 100% clean by 2050. There's a mayoral election in London where I'm from in the spring, and we've already had 2 of the major candidates say that would be part of their pledge. So we're trying to get sort of all of the candidates calling for a vision of the city going 100% clean. And I think that's something that's kind of really exciting, because we have all played a really important role in making sure that on the last day of COP, we still have options in the text about kind of getting rid of all greenhouse gases. And, you know, young people have been a huge part of that. We've been talking about how old we'll be in 2050 for years and years. So, you know, I think that's really important, even though, you know, I imagine it's going to be a kind of a really long next 24 hours. And it's very easy to sort of go a little bit mad or feel like you're sort of losing hope. But actually, you know, this is becoming a real thing. We've got, you know, whole countries saying they're going to go fossil free, and that is really incredible. So let's use that momentum, and let's think about all the different opportunities where we can speak truth to power and say, actually, the fossil fuel industry is done. And so why are we still supporting that with our cities or our regions or our national governments? And then, you know, I think we will get it to become a sort of international norm, whether that comes in the Paris Agreement or whether that's kind of the future agreements catching up with where we already are.
Thank you. So there is a medical emergency with the health of the planet, and the doctors are on their way out, but they will share just a quick update for early next year.
Okay, so I think one of the issues we're going to be most concerned about next year has to do with loss of image, because it's very important for the whole health sector to be following that a lot, and also creating the new generations of students who have to come and follow within WA as well. So a lot of COP simulations and weekend and workshop within this.
Great, thank you. Good luck. Okay, and I saw Sharif in the room from the North Africa coordinator for the Arab Youth Climate Network. He's got, just give us a little teaser on what you're up to. What are you guys thinking about for 2016?
So currently as the Arab Youth Climate Movement and Arab Youth, so we are preparing for COP22 now, and we are making meeting with all youth from different countries and so on. During the past 2 days, we did meetings with African group, and yesterday with the supposed to be Congo and the other from Morocco team, just to build and engage all the youth team in COP22 preparation. And we are trying to push also in Arab countries, especially, for example, Jordan, to go in renewable by next year, and other countries like Tunisia, Morocco, and Lebanon. And additionally, as it's very important by COP22 for Arab youth, it's a greater chance that COP is coming back to Arab countries. So it's going to be the time for youth to take the lead also and to come up with the solutions to present it to our governments by next year, to solution to the climate change impacts and so on. And we are really very welcome to any kind of collaboration between everyone who would like to support in COP22. Sorry? Same, guys, it's a preparation for COP. And also, we just a quick idea, we were thinking about doing something like carnival or as a preparation for COP, and we might meet, for example, in a country, for example, in Mauritania or Morocco, all of us, and then walk to COP. So it could be the mobilization for COP. So
who's up for walking across North Africa to Morocco? Sounds exciting. Okay, well, so we have a fantastic next few months ahead, regardless of what happens in the next 12, 24 hours. Important work to do, and I think we are on the cusp of sending some really strong signals of accelerating this transition, of bolstering resilience, but we know that is really nothing in comparison to the hard work that we've done to get here and the hard work that we have in the next years and unfortunately decades, I guess. But if we get to do that hard work with each other, and there's a traveling carnival across North Africa and everything else, I think that's probably all right. We have seen that these COPs are huge, awesome opportunities for building the movement, and it's really cool that the MENA region, the Arab world, Northern Africa, has an opportunity to use this upcoming event to do all the cool stuff that has to happen at home. Okay, so do we want to do just a quick comms update? I think if those of you have to go off to all of the meetings that we're allowed to get into today, you should feel free. We won't be insulted. But Tierney can give us just a quick roundup of the sort of communications picture, and then we'll wrap it up.
Yeah, cool. Just to reiterate about tomorrow's actions first is that more information will come out throughout the day about where to gather if you do want to take part of those. But one thing that we should mention is obviously none of those are being sort of officially allowed the French police. So just keep that in mind if you are going to go along to some of these things, that it will be classed as civil disobedience, and bear that in mind. In terms of comms, kind of expected it to be the last of the negotiations. It's not, so that's a bit of a weird one. But lots and lots of media yesterday, all sort of starting off looking at where we were at, kind of the process, how long it was going to take, when it was going to end, and then the new text came out last night, and journalists quickly started digging in to kind of figure out how it compared to the text, getting some sort of different reactions from different people. So that sort of dominated everything today in terms of coverage, and probably will do for the next few days as journalists try to understand what's going on. And I'm sure the fact that they're not included in any meetings will not stop them from reporting on it. So I expect a lot more over the coming days, digging further and further into the text. I have to say that a lot of it still seems quite positive in terms of the fact that we will come out of here with something, and that it's not going to be something absolutely horrendous, and a lot of journalists saying that we're getting closer. And yeah, so that's pretty much it, to be honest. There's not a lot else to say today, because I think most news outlets are kind of focusing on the same thing, honing in on certain issues that are obviously some of the key issues that we've been talking about all week, including the long-term goal, including the 5-year ratchet up mechanism, and different things. So I think at this point it's just a little bit of watch this space in terms of seeing how they're going to kind of take the agreement and what they're going to say about it on top of what we're all going to say about it. So yeah, that would be quite interesting. I think if you want to dig in a little bit more today, I imagine that a few of the different NGO coalitions will still be having their press conferences to kind of help you decipher that. I think there's still one scheduled for Cannes today, but it's not going to be now, as it usually is. It's actually at 4 o'clock. And yeah, I think Friends of the Earth have also got one where they're digging into the text. And I think at this point, it's just kind of watch this space to see what happens and as the day develops, because it's going to be fluid today. Things will drop off the agenda, things will come back on the agenda. So yeah, just keep your eyes peeled if there is anything specifically that you're looking out for.
And please do use the listserv to promote your actions. So the ones that are planned today, if you have additional details, you want to send an extra push. There are quite a few people here that are sleeping right now, but are on our Daily Tck Google group. We can pick that up and amplify it, and hopefully get you some bigger numbers. And any questions or updates that you have that you want to share, feel free. So that's it. Thanks very much. We'll see you in the coming hours, and then it sounds like in the coming decades. Lots of work to do.